Okay. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, health, tax, professional advice. We're not responsible for any losses or damages or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or the management. This podcast may contain adult themes, so parental discretion is advised. Today's guest is a powerhouse of purpose. Yes, she is an Army veteran, author of 3 books, and the founder of Ruck-Wood Recovery, where she helps families reclaim their assets that they never knew they lost, from surviving PTSD to thriving as a private investigator and entrepreneur. Her story is one of grace and giving back. Get ready for a conversation packed with insight, impact, and inspiration. So welcome, welcome. You could tell them that,
Hello.
you can elaborate on the intro and, tell them your name and, just, I didn't think that I left off.
All right. So my name is Tamara Rucker. I am the owner of Ruck-Wood Recovery, a licensed private investigations and asset recovery firm that is actually located in St. Louis, Missouri, that serves the whole of Missouri regarding tax foreclosure surplus and unclaimed property claims, as well as individual private investigations. And yeah.
Okay. So I know that you have a army background, a military background. So can you take us back to, what influenced you or what ignited that passion to join the military?
Well, I actually came from a military family.
Oh,
So my mother was in the military, my father, as well as my grandpa and my other grandpa. So,
oh,
um, out of all my sisters, and I have 5 sisters growing up, I was the only one who actually went into the service, and that was by my dad's nudging. He really wanted his oldest daughter to go in there. So, and I was already rough and tough anyway. So I was already a tomboy. So I said, okay, like I'll do it.
so would you say this sort of shape your earliest, yearning for justice and or protection in regard to your current activities that you do? Would you say that this helped shape it?
It did. It actually did. When I joined the service, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do, I actually went with my step grandpa's profession, which was military police officer. And given my background as a wild teenager, that was very surprising to a lot of folks. So
Mhm. Mhm.
joining as a military police officer and getting that training, uh, it it really did shape my need for justice there. It truly did. And I just got a passion for helping people more than anything. I've always been soft-hearted, but getting to join the service and especially deployments, that really helped shape it, especially seeing what's going on around the world and then coming home seeing what goes on here.
Yeah, because you had what? You served 10 years and you completed 3 deployments.
Yes,
Where were you
ma'am.
deployed? Where were you deployed?
So as soon as I got done with basic training, I was in Iraq. We were
Really?
beginning training for Iraq. So I was there for a year. And then after that, I went to training to go to Guantanamo Bay, but I ended up not going there and then going to training for Kuwait. And so I deployed to Kuwait. And then after that, I became a drill instructor. And after becoming a drill instructor,
A drill
uh,
instructor.
yes.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'm just out of curiosity. Were you just was it females you were, or you had a mixture of both sexes to deal with?
So, as a military drill instructor, I went to a drill sergeant unit, but then when I actually got to do the drill instructing, I started working for a challenge academy, which is actually at-risk teenagers, which I had a passion for helping because I was one of those teenagers at one point. And so getting to be a drill instructor and help guide those teens was amazing. There's a lot of challenge academies. They're located on military bases. So a lot of these kids they get in some trouble and then they're court ordered to go to these challenge academies to get some discipline and structure. So that really, that gave me a sense of a real big sense of purpose. I loved helping those kids.
That's interesting because coming from a military background, it sounds like your great grandfather was in military also. So I mean, it's a couple generation. So I'm surprised that you would have gotten out of Anne. Or become a little rascal, for lack of a better word.
Yes,
How did
yes.
it
It
happen?
was
Were you just defined because you didn't want to be bothered with all this structure? I'm interested to find out that part of you, that defiant part of you.
that defiant part of me. I think I just kind of didn't know who I was at the time.
Okay.
I think I was just more than anything struggling with who I was, struggling with fitting in. I grew up in a rather mixed neighborhood, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't necessarily fit in with with the black kids because they say you talk too white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so then, some of the white kids were more embracing of me. Like they embraced me a little more, but they were getting in a lot of trouble. So it was, I just ended up going that way and getting in a ton of trouble
Mm-hmm.
as I was getting older. And um, yeah, a lot of, I'm surprised I'm alive today.
Oh
That's just,
wow, that bad?
yeah. Oh yeah. You hear people say, "Oh, when we were kids, we were outside. We didn't have to come in until the street lights were on." Da, 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 da. And for me, I'm not reminiscing on that because I know what I was out there doing. Do I want my kids out there like I was? Uh-uh. Nope. Because I know what I was doing. I sure don't want my kids out there like that. No way. If they're anything like me, they would give me a heart attack.
That's interesting. Thank you for your honesty.
You're welcome. I grew out of it though. I grew out of it. It was really the military that
Yeah,
gave me
yeah, yeah.
that structure.
You had to be shaped, dust off a little bit there, right?
Oh yes.
So, so let's talk about your journey with PTSD. How is it just from the military or did you have a history of it before?
There were a few things that happened in my childhood that bothered me a lot, but
Okay.
it was the military. It was a PTSD from the deployments, always having to be on the lookout, being QRF. I was part of a ready force and a combat support unit. So it wasn't a picnic, you know what I mean? It wasn't a
Mm,
picnic at all. We would always have to respond to some sort of emergency. And then there was, the trauma of being around certain males that abuse their authority.
right.
That was a huge part of it. And hazing was an issue when I was in. Um, that can really ruin your sense of self when you're achieving something, when you feel like you joined to be part of something bigger than yourself, but that same thing is what is basically convincing you that you're not worth it, especially when those folks who are supposed to be guiding you and helping you advance in your career are the ones taking advantage of you.
Okay. Because I know personally for me, I don't think I could have gone into the military. Because when I look and listen to how they just break it down to nothing. I don't want to, I suppose you have to reset your mind to follow commands and instructions so that they have to probably, break you down until you sort of, it reminds me of that movie, Roots, where they were
Mhm.
trying to say, it's Kunta Kinte, to tell Kunta Kinte that that's not his name.
Oh yeah,
Remember, they were giving him a different name? Or Toby, which
trying to
was, I don't remember which one
Toby.
it was. Toby, right. It's something
To-
like that, that you have to, you have to break down who you are, you know?
Oh yeah, you don't have a
Yeah,
first in the military. We don't they don't go by first names. They go by last name. So
right.
my name was not Tamara. It was Rucker, and
Yeah.
that was it. It was
Okay.
it. Or whatever your rank is. So if
Whatever
you're
your
a
rank is.
private, they're calling you private. You don't have
Hmm.
a name. So, um, but again, when it comes to the trauma of being in the service, you got certain people who will break you down on purpose,
Hmm.
not just to break you down to mold you into greatness or mold you into a great soldier, but folks that'll literally try to break you down at who you are just because they can. And
Okay.
it takes a lot of resilience to get through that. And I actually got to the point where I felt like the one thing that I was most proud of in my life was the one thing that I felt I wanted to leave at a certain point because
Oh,
it was
wow.
so bad.
Hmm. Okay. So what inspired you to start your what's it, Rookwood recovery?
Yes.
Yeah, what
So,
inspired you?
Ruck-Wood Recovery was started while I was in the process of leaving the trying to do something for myself. I had found out that unclaimed property was a thing. I had already previously been in service. I had already done investigations. I had already been in law enforcement. So being an investigator wasn't new to me at all. So when I found out that unclaimed property was a thing and I found out that tax foreclosure surplus was a thing, I said, okay, well, let me combine this and start Ruck-Wood Recovery, this investigative experience with asset recovery and make something of it. And as much as, but that's also in conjunction with the fact that my husband at the time was in real estate. Well, he was buying, properties and he was also a
Yes.
property manager. So he wanted to figure out, hey, what about purchasing tax sale properties? But I was more interested in what happens after the tax sale. And so that's when, I really became serious about wanting to do helping folks collect the surplus from that tax sale. And if you need me to explain what tax foreclosure surplus is, I'm happy to do that.
Yes, I think our listeners would want to hear, what happens to a family's assets after foreclosure and all of that. Good, at a very high level.
All right. So when a house goes into tax foreclosure, it means, especially I'll just take this state for instance, when a property owner does not pay their real estate taxes for 3 years, that house goes up for sale in a tax auction. Okay. And now, many times, more likely than not, it's going to result in a surplus. And the surplus is basically just the back taxes that were owed, which is where the auction price starts at. So where the bidding starts and where it ends, which it goes to the highest bidder. So say someone owed $5,000 in back taxes and the property sold for $100,000 at the tax sale. That original property owner or their heirs, if the property owner is deceased, their heirs or the property owners entitled to $95,000. That difference between the back taxes and what it sold for at tax sale. But most of the time, I'm just going to say most of the time, because there are some counties that are actually good at it. Once that notice goes out that the property did sell, the notice does not state specifically that that family or homeowner is entitled to the surplus. So more families than not aren't even aware that they're entitled to the surplus from the sale of their own home.
Oh,
And
wow.
what we do is help them claim it.
So, okay, so what happens to that money, that surplus money that they didn't know that they're entitled to? What happens to it? Who gets it?
So according to our state statute, and I'd like to get into this later. According to our state statute, if the money is not claimed 3 years after the date of sale, and it starts at the date of sale, even though that 3 years, that redemption period is part of it as well. So that takes off a year, and then you've got another 90 days. So that takes off a year and 3 months.
Oh, wow.
But if it's not claimed within 3 years, the county gets to permanently keep it and move it into their school fund,
Oh,
meaning the
wow.
homeowner loses the right to claim the proceeds from the sale of their own home that they spent 15, 30 years paying off.
So tell me something. When the property is being auctioned, do they get it appraised and have an idea what's the true value, market value? Or the
No,
market value
these
is
tax
not taken to,
sales,
so it's
no.
just what the tax is and anything else is just gravy.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. It could be a $400,000 home, and you could
Really?
be $10,000 behind in back taxes. But if it only sells for $100,000 at the tax sale, then it only sells for $100,000 at the tax sale. It's not based on the property's value. It's just based on the highest bidder or what these investors want to pay for it.
So people just basically make a living of going around and finding all of these properties and just purchase and paying off the taxes and taking them over.
Oh, yeah. These properties sell for pennies on the dollar.
Mm.
Pennies on the dollar. And the family is the fact that that happens, they sell it for undervalue, and then on top of that, they keep the proceeds from it, which is really considered home equity theft. And I'm actually working with
Some
currently.
form of theft. I don't know what you want to call it. What it-
Oh yeah. I'm
some,
currently working with a few House representatives in my state to change the statute. I actually just
yeah,
spent the last week meeting with a House representative who is sponsoring a bill to change our statute.
yeah. I mean, ah, so, so tell me about a situation or a time that you assisted a family who was in this particular situation. Do you have it that you can talk about without
Yes,
compromising any information? Yeah. Mhm.
yes, I do. I actually, I'll say I'll take my very first claim that I ever did.
Okay.
These folks, when I looked at, I audited the county for the list of the surplus, and I actually reached out. I found out the actual homeowner had passed away, which was an elderly man, but then I also found out that the man's daughter, his only child, passed away as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
after that, I ended up having to search for and investigate and find the next of kin, which her sons were actually living, but they were in a different state. So reaching out to them and letting them know, hey, y'all are entitled to up to $150,000. These heirs were entitled to. And they signed a contract, and then we got them through probate. And one thing that my firm does is we pay for probate for all of our clients if probate is needed. To get that judgment that states that they're entitled to that money, we put that with the claim, submit it to the county, and then the county puts that up for approval and they pay out a check to the client. And then what we do is we get paid 20 to 25% of each claim.
Well, they would have gotten anything. So, I mean, if you
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
interview, yeah. Okay.
Most
Wow.
people are extremely grateful. And I'll tell you what, it is really difficult to call somebody and say, you're entitled to this money but if somebody called you to tell you that, wouldn't you be like, who are you, first of all?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
This must
a
be a
lot of people,
scam. The first thing
right.
probably think it's a scam or something, eh?
There's a lot of companies that are from out of state that'll call people within our state. And I always encourage folks, utilize a recovery firm that's close to you. The only reason that they hired me as their representative is because I'm in the county where the property is located. So it was expedient for
Yeah,
them
yeah.
and more beneficial to them. But
Hmm.
A lot of out-of-state firms will go picking through lists and try to call folks in other states, but they can't offer them the personalized services that they need being close to the county. So I always advise people, you know what I mean, just make sure that you're utilizing somebody in your state so you can get that service. There is a real person handling your claim and you don't get
Exactly.
scammed. Always make sure
Exactly.
you can see the person, talk to a real person, in-person notarizations, have a meeting, go out for coffee, something, but don't do everything over the phone. It's probably
Right.
not a good idea.
Exactly. 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 So, do you think it's certain geographical areas that this happens, or is across the board? I mean,
It is every state.
no, is it? Do you find it in affluent areas also where people
Oh,
affluent?
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yes. Oh, yes. The surplus in more affluent areas is obviously going to be a lot more because the taxes are higher. So, these investors, what they do when they see these properties go up for tax sale is they will actually send out what's called bird dogging. They will send out lookouts to go check out the property and assess the property, and they'll actually determine what their highest bid is going to be. They'll
Okay.
say, okay, I'm looking at this property, I'm looking at its condition, even though I can't go inside of it. What I'm going to do is assess from the outside. And I'm going to say, okay, and what they say is, well, I'm not going to pay any more than $100,000 for this property because I want to make this much money in profit. So I'm only going to pay this much. So they're not going off of the market value per se. They're going off of how much they can make on flipping it, fixing and flipping it, or wholesaling it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But what was sort of driving at is okay, let's word it a little different. The persons who don't normally know that they're supposed to get any money back are normally persons in the underserving communities, or it's
Oh,
across the
yes.
board. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's normally in underserved communities. However, it is a lot of elderly folks. I would say it's
Elderly.
underserved and elderly is equal because again, when you pay off a mortgage, most of the time when you have a mortgage to begin with, your real estate taxes are being paid by the mortgage company.
Yes, yes.
So once that's over, once you pay that house off, a lot of folks don't realize you got to set up an account or say put money to the side to pay those real estate taxes yourself. If not,
Yeah, that's
the home
true.
goes into tax foreclosure. But when somebody passes away and there's not a clear chain of title or that mail is just not making it to the family, that's another thing that happens. So they're either elderly or underserved and they can't really afford the real estate taxes on the house, or somebody's passed away and the mail is just not getting where it needs to go. The family might see it, but they're not necessarily aware the house is going to go into tax foreclosure until
Right.
it does.
Yeah, because in their mind, there's no money owed on this house. It's free and clear.
Right.
Bum paid it up like 30 years ago. Right.
Right. And by the time
Yeah.
it goes to tax sale, the bill is 3 years past due. So that's a lump sum of money. And most counties do not allow payments. They don't allow a payment plan. You've got to pay the entire amount of
Oh,
back
wow.
taxes if you want to save the property. So if you're $15,000 behind in taxes, in real estate taxes, well, guess what? If you want to save that property, you better up $15,000 or it goes to that investor.
But can the person sell the property themselves?
Can they sell the property themselves?
Yeah.
I would say before the redemption period expires for first and second sales, the family has a chance to redeem what's called to redeem the property, which is that 1 year they have to come forward with the money and get the property back and pay all those back taxes. But what they can also do is sell it to a wholesaler or just if they have a clear chain of title. If, like, say the homeowner's still living, what they can do is sell it to a wholesaler and also part of that offer can be the back taxes. So what that wholesaler would do would be buy the property, the family takes some of that money, pays the back taxes, and they can save the home, but it wouldn't be their home anymore if they decided to sell it while it's in that redemption period. So basically they're selling it to someone else so the county doesn't get, the county doesn't keep it or keep their money. They
Hmm.
can do that. But and they can also sell it for more than what it sold for at the tax sale
Right,
most of the time. Yeah. If they want
right.
to sell it for market value, a good way to do it is to sell it to somebody, do a private sale instead of
Private sale,
just
yeah.
accepting that, yeah, just accepting that tax sale bid.
Oh wow. This thing is so scary. There's so many things to know about it. So so let's talk about you. You know, you have so many hats. You're a mother, you're an entrepreneur, you're a veteran, you're an author. So how do you juggle all of these different
I
hats that
don't.
you have?
I don't. It does take a lot of putting everything on your calendar, scheduling things around the kids, making sure that I can help them with their homework, making sure we get that snuggle time in. It's really a matter of prioritizing what's really important first.
Mhm.
Um, for me, it's the kids and then business. So the kids, then business. But also what really keeps me grounded is prayer and faith. That's
Absolutely.
another big thing.
Yeah.
That it wasn't, I would say it wasn't until I found out who I am in Christ where I was able to actually center myself and hold it together. Yeah.
Would you like to elaborate a little bit more? Because I was find out from people talking to them that the turning point always happens right at that the darkest, lowest point where you say that, I can't I can't I can't figure this out. I can't deal with this. I have to give it to a higher power. What was
Yeah.
what happened to you? Right.
I was in an abusive marriage, where I was with somebody who really they liked the idea of marriage and kids, but didn't actually want marriage and kids. They wanted to look good, but they didn't want to nurture the ground. You know what I mean? I
Right.
was going to church, just me and the kids, while my husband was at home scrolling through Facebook, talking to other women. Like it was he didn't want to be together as a family, unless it was at certain events with his family. So it was with somebody who was not encouraging, who would tell me I have no value on a regular basis, would tell me that no one would want me as a single mother, that my business was gonna fail. And it wasn't until I actually started leaning into yeah, and one thing that he didn't like was me going to a therapist or a counselor. And I had accepted that help, but he would say I was pathetic for even needing a therapist to deal with sexual trauma, or even told me that I had it coming to me, would use my trauma to make me feel like I deserved what was happening to me. So it wasn't until I actually got into like just delved into my Bible, started setting aside time for prayer, meditating and just leaning into focusing on my children. And I think he knew, I do believe he knew that if I was to lean into Christ and chase a relationship with God and find out who I am and find my strength, that I would leave him. And he was right. Um, he actually told me, he said, you know, I do this to you because I know that if you realize how good you are, you would find someone better. And I was just like, well, why don't you stop? And and so it was again, when I find out who I am in Christ, I found my power in prayer and power in being a mother and an entrepreneur. And I realized that I need to love myself. I got to stop chasing the love of this man and start chasing the love of God. And I found the strength to leave. And the Bible, I realized the Bible tells us the type of people to stay away from, the type of people that can break you down and break your soul. They'll try, but when you find Christ, you end up shielding yourself from that. So that is what gave me the strength to walk away.
But normally light and darkness can't exist in the same space anyhow. So if you're the
No,
light, the darkness can't stay. The
no.
darkness is gonna go.
I do believe though that I truly believe that God does sometimes, if you're a good person, you were meant for more. Sometimes God puts that darkness, not puts it, but allows it into our lives to teach us a lesson. And that darkness, while that darkness is over it, our flaws and what we might need to fix or what we may need to address, whether it's our building our relationship with God and whatnot, those things shine in that darkness and it gives us the
Yes,
chance to grasp onto those so we
yes,
can actually go and get ourselves ready, not for the husbands that we choose, but for the husband that God chooses for
true.
us.
That's
So I
true.
was
That's
chasing
true.
this man instead
Mhm.
of chasing the man that God chose for me.
Right. That's so true. I agree with you on that. So so let's talk about your books. You've written 3 books, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. Which one of them challenged you most emotionally and why?
I would say the one that challenged me most emotionally was breaking the chain, empowering strategies to deal with the narcissist. It's because I wrote that book while with the narcissist. And even though I didn't give specific names or anything like that in the book, he took offense to that. And so after I published that book, my life was extremely hard in that same house with him.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a picnic at all. And I think it's because he felt like everything that I saw in him was laid bare in that book, even though it was a general book about dealing with a narcissist or being in a relationship or raising children with a narcissist and how to guard yourself from that, from breaking down. He didn't like that too much. So that was the most challenging, I
But
think.
let me ask you a question. I know we're serious here, but if you're gonna talk about something so in depth and you're still married to the person and all of that, it, I mean, people gonna infer that that's the person you're talking about.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean,
What the craziest thing was it's a general self-help book and I spoke with, of course my own psychiatrist, my own therapist and my own mental health team that I have, but also others as well, sitting down with them, doing interviews, getting their advice. So it wasn't even about my life. It wasn't
okay.
even about my life. It was it was all these different ways to deal with it from a bunch of different mental health professionals who specialize in dealing with narcissists and or healing from a narcissistic, relationship or trauma bond. So none of it was personal. None of it was made personal. It's all a factual book. But boy, again, did he take offense to that?
So the book is still out there, right?
It is. It can be found on Amazon Kindle. It can also be found on Apple, Apple and Google Books.
I'm sure, I'm sure, I'm sure the listeners gonna want to get that book. This is what
Oh,
that's all
yeah.
about.
But again, I was finding out who I was, finding my power, and I said, you know what? I think this is gonna help somebody. I
Yeah,
know this
yeah.
book is gonna help somebody because there's so many women that feel stuck that feel stuck, like they can't do anything about it. And there are ways to shield yourself from that abuse and find your strength to leave.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm. So let's talk about the wounds that occur to you when you were a veteran, invisible wounds. Do you want to talk
So
about that a little bit?
I struggled a lot with nightmares, um, jumpiness, extreme jumpiness. It was something that I had never been before. That jumpiness where somebody was sitting next to me, and if they moved, I would jump. If they moved without
Mm-hmm,
telling me, I would
mm-hmm,
jump. I actually didn't realize for the longest that I had started engaging in self-destructive behaviors. And actually, that was before I met this man. Right when I was already in the service when we had met. So, and I had already deployed to Iraq. But when I came back from Iraq, I started drinking heavily just
really?
to
Mm-hmm.
just to numb myself. And it actually wasn't until I met him that I stopped drinking. Um, and but then I was so I'll say I was so broken at the time that I fell for that. You know what I mean? And I said, I'm going to lean into this man and allow him to control me because he's telling me good things to do, like
Right.
not drinking, not going out. But then it turned into, you can't wear that. You can't do this.
Okay.
You're at the grocery store 5 minutes longer than you told me. Da 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 da. Like, that type of stuff. You know what I mean? So I was so depressed and harming myself so much that I ended up being attached to something else harmful. And when people are going through that PTSD, that brokenness, I tried to take my own life at a certain point.
Oh, wow.
I was hospitalized. I did not want to live. I did not, because again, like I told you, I had gone through sexual trauma
Mm-hmm.
in the military, and then I went from that to self-medicating and engaging in destructive behaviors to this person who is now abusing me. And I was more susceptible to the abuse because I was already struggling with PTSD. And I was also with somebody who encouraged me and told me that it was pathetic to get therapy. So, someone who didn't believe in it. So for so many years, it was more than 8 years. I went without the help that I needed.
The other person in did the other person have a military background also?
He was in the service, but he didn't deploy at all.
Oh,
He
okay.
was a National Guard member, but his unit wasn't, a
Okay,
combat unit
okay,
or anything like
okay. I
that.
was just interested to see. You know, we could go on for hours because it's
Oh
just
yeah,
so
I can
it's
go on
really
for
yeah,
hours.
interesting
But when
conversation.
I didn't tell you about though, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't tell you about though when I left all of that, again, leaning into church, leaning into Christ, everything in my life got better. Every single thing. Focus changed. Self-love came back. Uh, Self-respect came back. My children's behavior got better because they saw their mother thriving. Everything got better once you find that strength and they saw their mother actually thriving. It was incredible. It was incredible to see.
That's beautiful. I know you have two very handsome young men. I saw them the other day when we did a preliminary. So I'm sure they're glad to see that you're thriving and a lot of people think that children don't understand and don't see. They see and understand more than what we think.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
the sense thing. They're very innocent, so they pick up things quickly, you know. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I'm raising two empaths. They can tell. They can tell. I'll tell you that one of the biggest things that prompted me to do something about our situation was not only the acting out that our son was showing, our oldest son, but the fact that I could smile in my son's face and he could say, "Mommy, what's wrong?" He knew something was wrong before I'd ever say anything or I'd ever show it.
Right, right,
And he's the kind of kid where if he, we have to, I have to tell him all the time, just because someone else is angry doesn't mean you got to be angry. He'll see somebody else crying or angry and then get upset for them. And the same with my little one. They're very empathetic and it's like
right,
they feed on the emotions around them. So if
right,
there's instability and tension, they will be unstable and tense. So
right,
it's really important to have them in a stable, loving, and supportive environment where emotions are, well managed.
right. That's so true. So what's next? What's next for you? We're wrapping up. We want to find out what's next for you personally, professionally, and spiritually. What's next for you?
Well, what's next for me is I think I mentioned this earlier, I am actually working with a few Missouri State House representatives to
Hmm.
reform the tax foreclosure surplus bill in Missouri. So our statute is so vague, it allows all of that stuff I was telling you to happen. So instead of it staying the same, we're gonna fix that vagueness, give some timelines, have push for tax foreclosure surplus to be reported to the unclaimed property division. And I had this conversation with you before about unclaimed property. That's
Right,
where all abandoned financial assets in a state go for everyone to claim them or any for the owners to claim with no time limit on when they can claim it. So that right there is my big baby right now. Starting here in December, I will be heading to Jefferson City to speak
oh
in
wow.
front of the House of Representatives on that.
Beautiful.
And I'm extremely excited. Spiritually, I'm going to continue building my relationship with God and continuing to teach my children to love God and to be good, honorable, and loving and compassionate men. Um, that's all I can dream of. I only hope and it takes good works too to raise them to be the type of men that that can build a family and nurture that family and create amazing, amazing leaders as well. I see the leadership in my sons and I just want them to be able to properly utilize that,
Right,
to make a
right,
difference.
right.
So yeah, and also I became a part-time Sunday school teacher too at church, so that's
Oh,
another
that's
good.
beautiful. There you
Yeah.
go.
This
There you
Sunday
go.
I will be teaching the kids class.
There you
So
go.
I'm very happy about that.
They will
And
love you. They will love you. They will
oh
love you.
yeah, they're great kids. I
Yeah.
love it. I absolutely love it. And my son's in the class too. One of
All
them is in the
right.
class.
All right. Right.
I
Right.
love it. And if anybody wants to find, as far as me talking about unclaimed property, every single state has an unclaimed property division. So if you're curious about, tax foreclosure surplus, please go look at your statute for Missouri. It's revised statute 140.230. And for unclaimed property, if you're looking for unclaimed property for yourself, please visit missingmoney.com and search your name, search your family members, search your deceased family members, and find out if you got some money sitting there for you, because 1 out of 5 people do.
Yeah. So how can persons listening to you, how can they get in touch with you?
They can, to find out more information, they can visit www.ruck-wood-recovery.com. There's tons of information there. There's links to, state statutes and state laws regarding tax foreclosure surplus and unclaimed property. And then they can also visit the Ruck-Wood Recovery Facebook page as well, or they can give a call to 314-692-4272. We're happily standing by to answer whatever questions you may have.
Right. What I do, I put it in the notes in put in Spotify, so if they wanna to make contact with you, they can find it inside there. I'll do that. So it's been awesome speaking to you, and and I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot about reclaiming what's rightfully ours. And until next time. So we ask now our listeners to stay empowered and keep showing up for life, for the life you deserve. Thank you so much for
Amen.
being such an awesome guest.
Thank you for having me.